Well, thank you so much for being here. Today, we're here to discuss what's been going on with these recent actions by DOGE. What we've been finding out is that DOGE has more increasingly been going into federal agencies, and as they're doing their evaluations, they've been increasingly and accelerating, cutting the budget, but more specifically, laying and firing people. We've seen that these actions don't affect just, federal workers or these bureaucrats that they're talking about, but regular, everyday people who we work with and we see in our community. And this is why we wanted to elevate this situation and have a series of roundtables and town halls where we're talking about and hearing more from the community. Last week, within my office, we had more than 30 people come to the office in DC to tell us how they're being affected, but more importantly, how our constituents are actually being affected. So I'm happy to be here today, not because of the situation, but to really uplift the voices of the community members who are being actually demonized. Too much in the media, I'm seeing people talk about these bureaucrats, the people who are spending and wasting and being fraudulent in the federal government. And we're talking about numbers of thousands of people who are unjustly being fired, thousands of people who are unjustly being laid off, without cause, mind you. And we need to understand that these are real people who are being demonized, people in our community. So today I want to say that I'm so happy that we actually have people here from our unions to talk about what they're experiencing, and on the end of this, who will actually be affected. So today we'll hear from Damian Deleonardo, Yanick Larose-Augustin and AFGE, and J. Scott Bayne from IAFF. And as we have this press conference today, I wanted everyone to know what's really at stake here. We see that DOGE is not just auditing the federal government, which we welcome. The president has his discretion to audit the federal government and find waste and abuse, which we agree with. However, their encroachment on the constitutional rights that actually members of Congress have, which is to set the budget, to audit, to actually look into what provisions that are going on in the federal government. This is where their encroachment is leading. And what we're finding with that encroachment, as they're doing Congress's work, we're finding more and more that they're actually having more collateral damage than they are being more effective. And unfortunately, that collateral damage is actually our constituents and American people. It's vital to remember that these actions have real consequences for real people. Every person fired without cause has bills to pay and food to put on their table. These actions affect every American, whether you know it or not. If our Social Security workers are fired, who will ensure payments to get our seniors? If our doctors and nurses are fired from the VA, who will take care of our veterans? This affects us all, our friends, our families, and our neighbors. We've been working tirelessly with union members and with also other nonprofits to make sure that we're just not standing by and letting our community be ravaged. We've been pushing different lawsuits to ensure that we can stop these procedures and make sure that anyone who is working, if they are let go, it is without cause and it's not discriminate. We've made some successes in this progress. Some of these successes include stalling some of the firing, stopping some of the firing, and we worked with great organizations such as Democracy Forward, and we'll continue to work with them to make sure that every single person who is a federal worker is protected. We'll continue working hand in hand with every union to make sure that everyone is protected. As we move forward, just remember that we have much work to do ahead, but we're working together. This is not a partisan issue. This is a people issue. We must stand with the people who actually make our lives better every single day. From our TSA workers, our Social Security workers, our VA workers, every single one of them need a voice and have a voice and need to be protected. And this is a time for everyone to act. And once again, what we're asking for is not that there's a federal audit, but is to allow Congress to do its job by setting the provisions, setting the budget, and actually looking at the collateral damage that would happen if you do these cuts. At the end of the day, we're seeing this full force, aggressive firing happening, not being cognizant of the harm that is coming. We've been seeing that even recently. We saw scientists being fired who are working with our nuclear arms, and now they're trying to bring them back. Where was the forethought to think about what damage was going to be caused and what was going to happen afterwards? DOGE is not equipped to do that because they don't have the background to do it. But you know who is? Members of Congress, members who have been elected by the people, members who actually are accountable to the people. And that's what we're here to do, is to do our job. And so I'm asking all of our fellow congressional members to step up and do our job. Take back our power and not allow it to lie in the hands of DOGE while we watch so many people whose lives are being damaged and ravaged every single day. This is what we were elected to do, to protect the community and all of our workers. So now I would like to hear from our community members and our unions who are here. And the first person we'll be hearing from is Damian Deleonardo.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Good morning, my name is Damian Deleonardo, and I serve as the first Vice President for Local 558, representing the dedicated TSA workforce from Melbourne all the way down to Key West. I'm here today to speak about the injustices to the federal employees continue to face. Despite what you might hear on the news, see on social media, federal employees are hardworking individuals who show up every day to serve the American people. In fact, during the 2018 government shutdown, which lasted 35 days, we were required to come to work without pay because we were deemed essential employees. I witnessed firsthand the hardships of our officers endured, and many couldn't afford to put gas in their car or even buy groceries, but still had to report for duty because they took the mission seriously. They cared about the American people. They wanted to make sure that the planes got there, took off, and landed at the same time safely. And we also want to make sure that history does not repeat itself with another long-distance government shutdown. Additionally, the idea of removing temporary probationary employees who the government has spent the time with, invested in, paid to train them, just to remove them does not make sense. It's very costly to the American people. We're paying for people to get trained, and now they're trying to remove them. That's a lot of waste right there that shouldn't be done. Thank you for the time and for hearing our concerns.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Yanick Larose-Augustin with AFGE.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Yanick Larose-Augustin, and I am the EVP for Local 2014, which is based also from Melbourne all the way down to South Florida to the Keys. And today, I'm here to represent some of our members, most our members, which we have about 42,500, which represent which is part of our group, our local. And we are facing a great dilemma. Our employees right now, they all confused. They don't know what's going on. At SSA, as he mentioned before, we work very hard. We get the people to pay to get their payment, their disabilities, their retirement checks. And when they're talking about cutting the budgets or firing our employees, we're understaffed. Okay, we understaffed. What happened is that what we have here, we have 1.2% of benefit outlays that Congress usually pass for us, and we're asking that is restored to us, because without that funding, we cannot produce, we cannot help our community as we usually have, as we have done. What I will look at here, the 1.2% is when we're operating with the 1.2%, we're operating at the highest and most efficient level, and the ratio of benefits to operation ensures an adequate workforce in its place and is armed with the tools and training to be effective. And it increased an adequate workforce would prevent overpayments that currently sit about $25 billion. What we're looking at with the 1.2 of benefit outlays, when we call the 1-800 number and looking for information, you have somebody who answers you in 5 minutes. When you don't have that, it takes you about 38 minutes because they're getting so many phone calls. With that budget, when you apply for disability and when you're appealing a disability for reconsideration, it takes about 120 days. Without the budget, it takes almost twice. It's about 231 days. When we have a hearing, for instance, Someone is, at the reconsideration level. If you disapprove, you got to go to the hearing level. With the budget, with that 1.2, it takes about 270 days. But without that, it takes over a year for you to hear an answer. And again, when we look back during the pandemic, we have a whole bunch of cases were backlogged. The disability office in Tallahassee, they were short staffed, and they're trying to make do with what they have, and that was impossible. So we had cases as of last year. We were still processing cases from 2022 and 23 to get people paid. Right now we're trying to do the best as we can, and what we're saying is that without that funding, if the government reduce that funding or take away, where would our population be? Because they depend on Social Security. It is vital. It's vital to their life, to their everyday life. And what we're seeing right now, the administrative funding is declining at 0% of benefit outlays. We're looking at from 1.226% declining to 0.86%. And this is no good. What we're saying also, with those people, the 30,000 Americans now dying while waiting for the benefits determination due to long service delays, funding at this level will significantly increase the public's ability to access their earned benefits, reducing the time it takes to receive an initial disability determination by more than 3 months. Will not only reduce frustration, it will save lives. And at the same token, we're asking for Congress to help us bring Social Security back to the way it used to be, because we need to help our people, our population, because they depend on us. All right? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Right now, we're here from J. Scott Bayne from IAFF. Thank you.
Morning, my name's Scott Bayne. I'm with the IAFF. We're here to have conversations today in reference to the cuts and the impact that it'll have on public safety and the firefighters that serve at the federal, state, and local levels. So we look forward to having those conversations and how those impacts continuously will have effects on not only the firefighters, the communities that we serve as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to continue our town hall, but I wanted to make sure we spoke to Skye Perryman. She actually couldn't make it in. She's on Skype, on Zoom, and she'll talk about some of the work that we've been doing as far as the cases and what we've won and where we are. Skye?
Hi, Congresswoman, and hi, everyone. It's great to be with you, even if I'm here virtually. And I wanted to say thank you so much to those that have already spoken about the experience that's happening across the country, and especially in Florida. My name is Skye Perryman. I'm the president and CEO of Democracy Forward, and we really want to make sure that people and communities across this nation have the legal representation they need in all cases, but especially as we are looking at what this administration is doing, which is really undermining the rights of people. When we talk about our civil service and our civil servants, we're not just talking about the rights of our civil servants and our civil service, although it's incredibly important that people be respected in the workplace and have the protections that they need, and we'll talk about that. But we're also talking about the ability of our government, a government that is supposed to be of, by, and for the people, the ability of our government to deliver for all of us and for the American people. Over 90% of people in this country believe that people in our federal civil service, our federal workers, should be hired and promoted based on their merit, not based on loyalty to a particular political agenda. But what this administration is doing with DOGE and with other activities is they're seeking to undermine that value. And they're seeking to undercut our civil servants, people like the ones that you've heard from today, who swear an oath to the Constitution and to serving the American people, and not to any kind of political loyalty, which is now what President Trump wants. And so at Democracy Forward, we have been on the front lines in the courts. We have filed over a dozen legal challenges since inauguration, including directly challenging DOGE in a few lawsuits. We have also been representing AFGE and other federal worker unions in order to ensure that federal workers have their rights protected. We are currently challenging the mass terminations of employees who are on probationary status. These are people that just joined the federal government within the last 2 years, that have been just mass terminated. We have won in the courts so far to preserve our federal workforce at the USAID and to stop the dismantling of the USAID. This is an agency that keeps Americans more safe at home and abroad. We are challenging attempts to undermine other federal agencies like our Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that help keep us safe from all types of predatory practices. And we've been able to secure a court order to stop and slow the administration from what they're trying to do there. What I want you to know is that there are lawyers at Democracy Forward and in many other organizations that are working night and day, through the night in the early morning, to make sure that we get into court in order to try to secure as many court orders as possible to protect people and to preserve our rights. So I really appreciate the ability to be here today and everything that you all are doing. And of course, we want to uphold our civil service at Democracy Forward. We have a project called Civil Service Strong that many organizations are part of, including AFGE. You can go to civilservicestrong.org and find resources if you're a federal worker or if you care about federal workers, about how to navigate this time. And we will also keep you updated on the lawsuits and legal challenges.
Thank you so much, Skye. So in conclusion, we want to thank everybody for being here today and know that we are going to have a series of town halls where we'll be listening to our federal workers, our union, just really trying to understand the impact. Because as of right now, we still don't know the impact of what DOGE is doing and how it's affecting everyone. We just know we have a massive amount of calls coming into our district that we're trying to work with and to really figure out how we can anticipate what the needs are, protect our workers, and make sure that everyone has a fair opportunity to due process and that they have all the protections that they are entitled to in their employment, but also make sure that all of our constituents and community members who rely on these government services do not have any interruptions and have access to it. Thank you so much.
Congresswoman, there are a lot of your fellow members are doing things today also. Can you talk a little bit about what the Democratic strategy is, how what you're doing and what your colleagues are doing today, how that is manifesting?
Well, I think the strategy is to protect the people at all costs. We're hearing more and more people who are being damaged by these swift actions of DOGE. And as they're coming in, I'm telling you, it's overwhelming the calls we're getting. We really need to hear more from them to stop them. And really what's at the heart of it is the overreaching of DOGE. So what we're doing is coming out, talking to the people we serve, the people who actually are, who vote us and hold us accountable, and making sure that we're elevating who they actually are. The things that really bother me about what I'm seeing right now is the demonization of our workers. The idea that you can go on X and say that these people are all bureaucrats and they didn't vote for the president and somehow this is a partisan issue is not true. We have a lot of hardworking people who actually are regular people in our communities, who contribute to our communities, who aren't these bureaucrats. And you know, we're in the state of Florida, a lot of them voted for the president. So it's not a party issue. It's really an issue of who is doing the job. As I mentioned, I have no problem. We welcome the audit. However, the person who carries out, you know, the final line of who's going to be fired or even the budget needs to be the Constitution, people who have the constitutional authority, and that is Congress. And I want to mention this point again. I think it's being lost. DOGE does not have the background to understand what Congress has appropriated. They do not understand how the dominoes fall. Once you remove this person or you remove the funding, there's not true understanding of what happens after that. And that's why we're seeing so much collateral damage. Unfortunately, those are the people, not just the employees, but the people in the community. And that's what we need to pull back. We need to claw back and make sure that we have our responsibility and we're not afraid to take back our responsibility as members of Congress.
As leverage, should the Democrats use the March 14th deadline, and not vote for a majority party plan to fund the government?
Well, I mean, I'm very clear. My biggest point is that this is not a partisan issue. As long as it's a partisan issue, I think we're going to be divided and we're not putting the people first. We have to look at it as our first responsibility, which is to take care of the people who elected us and to make sure we're fulfilling our constitutional rights. So as far as leveraging our votes to stop a budget bill, I don't think that's where we should be. We should be at the place of influence. Where can we work together to get this done for the people? And I think that's that's why we've come to these extreme solutions. It's because we have extreme policies, extreme politics, and now we have extreme collateral damage. This has to end. Let's put the people first and make sure that we're taking practical steps to make sure that we're getting to the desired end.
What are we hoping to get out of this town hall today? What are you hoping to get?
Well, we need to elevate and show people that the demonization of these bureaucrats isn't true. They don't all live in DC, that there's actual damages coming in. And that's going to give us more leverage to go back and say, hey, we're taking back our authority. And at the end of the day, we need every member of Congress to say we're taking back our authority. We also need to let the people know who are confused and who are scared that you don't have to fret just yet. We're fighting for you. And we have been having some wins in the courts. We're going to continue partnering with these organizations to make sure we're getting wins. We're going to continue fighting to make sure we're protecting everyone. And we're going to make sure that we take our constitutional authority back. I can't stress that enough because there are some people who are being quiet, allowing this to happen. This cannot happen. We are held accountable as members of Congress. We go there to protect the people, and every single member of Congress, despite your political background, must stand up right now and say DOJ does not have the constitutional ability to come in and start firing people and to start changing the budget. They do not. Congress has that responsibility, and we all must stand up and actually make sure we're fulfilling it and protecting our workers and ensuring that there's no dangers.
So will we see more lawsuits coming down the pipe, you think?
Yes, as long as this is the practice where we're going in and just cutting people, I believe you'll see more lawsuits. What we're really hoping is that this can stop. The madness needs to stop where you have DOJ coming in and making these huge cuts and then talking about it and demonizing that. We need to stop. We need to actually start, taking our breath and doing things the way it has to be done. Because some of the damage that I'm talking about, it's irreversible. So many families right now are depending on their checks. They have to pay their bills. They have to pay their daycare. And then you're told one day by email, don't come to work anymore. Where do you go from that? Some of these lawsuits are being settled weeks behind. So you have someone who's been out of work now 3 weeks, and then you're going to tell them, please come back. We made a mistake. We didn't have the authority. Where is the forethought? You've damaged that person. People can't afford eggs, and you want them to go 3 weeks? How do you pay your rent after not working for 3 weeks? And then even when you bring them back, who's going to give them their check when you sent everybody home? Who's going to make sure that their actual checks are coming back and they're going back to work? Everybody was sent home. We're seeing so much of the madness going on now, even when it comes to USAID. We're seeing so many programs that were turned off, and then now they're trying to turn them on. And as they're trying to turn them on, we're seeing more and more people who aren't there to do it. So we're here to ensure that we can stop the collateral damage, stop the bleeding of American people, stop hurting the American people because of all these quick actions. For what end?
Well, the president last night suggested maybe there'd be some kind of rebate or payment to each citizen. What do you think of that notion?
I think that's a good practice, especially when we see our citizens who are struggling. From the beginning when I ran, especially when we were in economic downturn, I always said that we have to protect our people. We have to make sure that they're given what they need to survive. So having a payment for the people is definitely present and needed, especially right now with our federal workers. And as I keep mentioning over and over again, I just do not want this to be a partisan issue. And I also stress that the president failing is a failure on all of us. So whatever works, we need to stand with him and make sure it works. Whatever we feel doesn't work, let's go to the table and work together and make sure we put something that can work for every American. And so I want to make sure that we don't keep going in the direction of being partisan and extreme. Let's stay on the people's side and be in the middle and make sure that every person succeeds. And that means we're not going to have obstructionists come in and say this isn't going to work just because you don't want it to work. But let's make it work for the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.